Welcome back to Wyckmoore.
The Mystical Realm of Wyckmoore, Part 9. The Choice at the Gate. Time held its breath. The older Rowan's hand stayed outstretched, steady, as if she already knew what choice the younger one would make. Her eyes were unreadable, not cruel, not kind, but certain. Kale's voice broke through the pressure, faint but urgent. "Rowan. Don't listen. This isn't your future, it's a trap." Ashwing's head swung between them, molten eyes narrowing. His voice rumbled in her bones. "Every path burns something away. Choose quickly before the seams tear." The hollow one strained against the reforged chains, and cracks spidered across the fire-welded links. It was smiling again, that awful knowing smile that suggested it didn't matter which way she chose. Rowan's thoughts raced. If she took the older Rowan's hand, she could change this moment, maybe even learn the truth about her mother. If she didn't, she might save the world now, but at the cost of never knowing. The older Rowan tilted her head as if reading her mind. "You think you're saving everyone," she said softly, "but you're just preserving the cage they built for us. For her. For you." Ashwing let out a sharp, resonant growl, his wings snapping wide. The blast of heat shoved the older Rowan back a half step. "Truth is a flame that can burn the bearer," the dragon warned. And flames spread. The air quaked. The gate's light flared so bright Rowan's vision whited out for an instant. And then, the hollow one roared. Not in anger. In delight. A second set of chains shattered completely, spraying shards of molten light in all directions. One glowing fragment whistled through the air toward Rowan. Ashwing moved like lightning. His clawed foreleg swept her up against his chest as his massive body twisted in the air. His wings snapped down, the heat around him surging into a storm. They didn't fly away from the gate. They dove through it. Colors, sounds, memories, everything blurred into a kaleidoscope as Ashwing's body shielded her from the tearing winds of the in-between. She caught fragments. The silent vale in winter, frozen waterfalls under a copper sky. A city she didn't know, burning from rooftops to harbor. A shadow walking beside her mother, holding something wrapped in silver cloth. Then they landed hard. Rowan tumbled to her feet, dizzy. They were in a forest, but the trees were wrong. Their leaves were a deep crimson, their trunks pale as bone, and the air smelled faintly of rain on stone. Ashwing lowered his head. "We are elsewhere," he said. "Not past, not future. A fracture place." From the shadows ahead, a low voice spoke. "Well, this is unexpected." A figure stepped into the red leaf light, carrying the exact silver-wrapped bundle Rowan had just glimpsed in the vision. The silver-wrapped secret. The figure stepped closer, his boots whispering against the pale roots that threaded through the crimson leaves. He was tall and lean, with hair the color of old ash, and eyes the deep green of forest shadows after rain. The bundle in his hands was small, no larger than a loaf of bread, yet he carried it with the care one might give to an infant or a dying flame. Ashwing shifted, lowering his head so his molten eyes were level with the stranger's. A low, rolling growl vibrated the ground beneath Rowan's feet. "Name," the dragon said simply. The man didn't flinch. "Irinder," he replied, "and before your companion scorches me where I stand, know that I am here because of her." Rowan took a step forward. "Because of me. We've never met." Irinder's gaze softened, but only slightly. "No. Not yet. But where I come from, you have, and you gave me this. He lifted the silver-wrapped bundle, the metal threads glinting in the strange forest light. Ashwing's nostrils flared as he leaned closer. Old magic, he murmured to Rowan. Sealed with oath blood and starlight. Whatever is inside was not meant for mortal hands. Rowan's fingers itched to pull away the wrappings, but the forest itself seemed to lean in listening. The crimson leaves whispered against one another, their voices like faint, overlapping songs. "What's inside?" she asked. Irinder hesitated. "If I told you, you might refuse to take it. If you open it, you will see and you will be changed. It is your decision, but the moment you choose, the path ahead will lock." Ashwing's tail swept the ground in a slow, restless motion. "We are already hunted," he reminded her. "The Hollow One's shadow follows even across fractures. If you carry something it desires." Irinder's eyes flicked to the dragon. "It already desires her. This would only make it inevitable." Rowan's breath caught. She didn't like the way he said inevitable. She looked at the silver bundle again, the way the threads pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. For a moment she thought she saw shapes moving beneath the cloth. A flicker of gold, a sharp glint like a scale. Ashwing stepped closer, his warm flank brushing against her side. "Whatever you decide," he said softly, "I remain with you. In all skies, in all worlds." The crimson forest grew quiet, waiting. Rowan reached for the bundle. The instant her fingers brushed the silver threads, the wrappings loosened, and the world shuddered as if a great door had been unlatched somewhere far beyond sight. Inside was not a weapon. It was not a map. It was an egg. Its shell shimmered with molten gold and deep ocean blue, patterns swirling as if alive. Irinder let out a slow breath. "Now you see, this is why you found me. This is why they will find you." From far away through the crimson trees came a sound Rowan knew too well, the tearing silk-on-bone voice of the Hollow One. "Little Gear, you've brought me family." The forest of red silence. The Hollow One's voice curled through the crimson trees like smoke, thin yet suffocating. Every leaf stilled, every root seemed to tighten in the soil, and Rowan swore she could feel the sound pressing against her ribs. Ashwing's wings snapped out, the heat radiating from his body pushing back the creeping cold that always followed that voice. "It is closer than I hoped," he rumbled. "We cannot stay here." Irinder clutched the egg to his chest and glanced between Rowan and the dragon. "Running won't matter. This is a fracture forest. It loops. Without a guide, you'll just circle back into its hands." The shadows under the pale-barked trees deepened, stretching unnaturally toward them. Rowan stepped closer to Ashwing's flank. "You know a way out?" she asked Irinder. "I do," he said, his voice tense, "but the Hollow One knows it too. It's the only way, and it leads through the grove of glass." Ashwing let out a low, dangerous growl. "Glass Grove is not a place for the unbound. Even I cannot fly above it without risking the fall." Irinder's mouth tightened. "Then we walk. Unless you'd rather hand it." He nodded toward the egg, to the thing that wants it. Rowan's hands curled into fists. "Not happening." The Hollow One's presence swelled, a pressure in the air that made Rowan's ears ring. Between the trees she caught flickers of its shape, wrong, shifting, unable to be fully seen without her stomach twisting. Ashwing crouched low so Rowan could climb onto his back. His scales were warm, steady beneath her hands, grounding her against the unnatural pull. "Hold tight," he warned. "If it catches us, there will be no sky left to run to." Irinder moved ahead, silver thread cloak flaring as he slipped between the trees, quick and precise. They followed him into the thickest part of the crimson wood. The deeper they went, the quieter it became, until Rowan realized she could no longer hear their footsteps. Not her own, not Irinder's, not even the deep thrum of Ashwing's breath. It was the red silence. She'd heard Kale speak of it once. A place where sound could not escape, and where predators hunted by the vibrations of your heartbeat. Ashwing's voice came directly into her mind. "Do not speak. Do not think too loud." Up ahead, the trees began to change. Their crimson leaves gave way to translucent crystal fronds that caught the dim light and bent it into strange, shimmering patterns. The grove of glass. Irinder stopped at the edge and turned. His lips moved, but no sound reached Rowan's ears. He pointed to the egg, then to the far side of the grove, then made a sharp slicing motion toward the shadows behind them. Rowan understood. "Move fast, don't look back." She met Ashwing's gaze. He lowered his head slightly, molten eyes locking with hers. "Give me always." They stepped into the grove of glass. And behind them, the hollow one crossed the red silence without a sound. The grove of glass. The first step into the grove was like stepping into another world. The ground crunched beneath Ashwing's claws, not soil or leaves, but slivers of glass that shifted and chimed in perfect silence. Every tree here was grown of crystal. Trunks spiraled in lattices of clear and smoky quartz, branches arched high overhead like frozen rivers, and leaves hung like shards of ice. They swayed in a wind that didn't exist. But the worst part was the reflection. Everywhere Rowan looked, she saw herself in Ashwing, fractured, multiplied, stretched into impossible shapes. Her face elongated into a grin she wasn't making, her dragon's wings bent at angles that should have broken bone. Ashwing's molten eyes narrowed, his tail sweeping protectively behind her. "Do not trust what you see here," he warned in her mind. "This place is older than your kind. Older than mine." Irinder moved ahead with deliberate steps, his boots somehow silent on the shifting shards. He carried the silver-wrapped egg as though it were more fragile than the glass beneath them. Rowan wanted to ask what it really was, but the red silence still clung to the air, stealing all sound before it could leave her lips. Instead, she let her hand rest against Ashwing's warm scales, letting the steady heat anchor her. For the first time since they'd met, she noticed a faint rhythmic vibration in his body. Not a growl, but something deeper, like a heartbeat that resonated through his entire frame. They passed the first crystal archway and something shifted. Reflections in the glass no longer mirrored their movements perfectly. Rowan's double turned her head when she did not. Ashwing's mirrored self curled its lip in silent menace, baring teeth at her. One of the other Rowans, a reflection to her left, moved a half-second before she did, like it knew what she was about to do. Her stomach tightened. He kept walking. Ashwing noticed too. His voice pressed into her thoughts, low and controlled. "It is watching through the reflections. The hollow one has eyes here." Irinder reached the center of the grove, a vast clearing where the ground dipped into a shallow bowl. In the middle of that bowl was a single black crystal spire, taller than the trees, smooth as still water. He stopped and set the egg down before it. The silver cloth fell away and Rowan's breath caught. It wasn't an ordinary egg. Its surface was made of the same black crystal as the spire, but veins of molten gold pulsed through it like lightning trapped under glass. The moment it touched the ground, the reflections all around them changed. Every mirrored Rowan was gone. In their place stood a single figure, cloaked, faceless, in every shard of glass. It leaned forward in unison across 1,000 fragments and reached toward the egg. Ashwing stepped in front of Rowan, wings flaring wide, heat flooding the air until the crystal trees hissed and cracked. "You will not take it," he growled. The spire began to hum, not in sound but in a pressure Rowan felt in her bones. The egg pulsed brighter, and a single golden crack split across its surface. Irinder's eyes went wide. He turned to Rowan, gesturing sharply. "Take it." "No." Rowan hesitated for only a moment before moving forward. The reflections shuddered and flickered, the faceless figure pressing closer to the glass. Her fingers brushed the egg's surface. It was hot, burning but not painful. Instead, the heat surged up her arm like a heartbeat syncing with her own. Ashwing crouched low beside her, molten gaze locked on the reflections. "Whatever hatches, it will change everything." Behind them, deep in the crimson forest, the Hollow One's shadow began to bleed into the grove. The hatchling of fire and glass. The grove seemed to hold its breath. Rowan knelt with her hands around the egg, its heat radiating like the core of a forge. Beneath her fingers, the golden crack widened in slow, deliberate pulses, as though the life inside was testing the strength of its shell. Ashwing stood over her like a living wall of muscle and flame, wings arched to block the reflections. His tail swept in slow arcs, claws digging into the shifting glass as if daring the grove to try something. Irinder circled them, not pacing but tracing shapes in the air with his gloved hands, symbols Rowan recognized from old wards against spirits. Only here they bent and shimmered, fighting against a pressure that pressed in from everywhere. The black crystal spire behind the egg thrummed louder. It wasn't a sound you could hear with your ears. It was a vibration that set Rowan's teeth on edge and made her heartbeat falter, almost as if the spire's rhythm was trying to replace her own. The golden crack spiderwebbed outward, each line glowing brighter, until the egg looked like it was full of trapped lightning. A thin wisp of steam curled from one fracture, carrying a scent Rowan couldn't place, something like rain on hot stone but richer, almost alive. The faceless figure in the reflections leaned closer in every shard of glass. In some, its head tilted like a curious predator. In others, its hands pressed flat against the surface, trying to push through. The first piece of shell broke away with a sound like a chime made of molten metal. It fell onto the ground and did not land. Instead, it dissolved into a swirl of golden dust that drifted upward, vanishing into the grove's still air. Inside, Rowan caught her first glimpse of movement, a small, narrow muzzle edged in tiny scales of gold and smoky black. The scales shimmered as though dusted with glass dust. The hatchling gave a muffled, high-pitched growl. Ashwing's molten gaze softened, just barely. "One of the emberclad," he murmured into Rowan's mind. "I thought my kind was the last." Another crack split the shell and a small claw emerged, sharp as a dagger, its talons tipped in translucent crystal. The hatchling pushed and the shell began to break away in large fragments, each one floating off as dust. The moment the creature wriggled free, Rowan felt something in her chest shift. Not in her heart, deeper. It was like a second heartbeat, smaller, faster, and not her own, yet tied to her. The hatchling stumbled into her hands, no heavier than a large cat, but radiating so much warmth she almost expected to see her fingers smoking. Its eyes were a bright newborn gold, but deep in the center of each pupil glimmered the faintest trace of red, like a coal beneath ash. It looked at Rowan. and then it looked at Ashwing. Ashwing lowered his head until their muzzles almost touched. The older dragon inhaled slowly, then exhaled a single stream of warm air over the hatchling. "You are not mine," Ashwing told it, "but you are of my fire. And you are hers." The faceless figure's reflection rippled violently. It raised both hands and the grove responded. Glass trees began to twist. Their crystal branches arched downward, scraping against each other with a sound that made Rowan's stomach turn. The slivers underfoot rose in slow drifts, swirling into jagged shapes like knives forming from snow. Irinder's voice finally broke the red silence, hoarse and urgent. "Go. The Hollow One is trying to manifest. Once it does." He didn't need to finish. Ashwing grabbed Rowan by her shoulder with his tail, swinging her up onto his back as the hatchling clung to her tunic. The glass beneath them cracked in long splintering lines, and from those cracks shadow bled upward, thick, slow, and hungry. The spire's hum turned into a deep, resonant note that shook the grove. Ashwing launched into the air just as the first of the shadows took shape, a long-reaching limb with too many fingers. Rowan looked back only once. In the shards of the crystal leaves, the faceless figure was no longer standing still. It was following them, perfectly matching their flight as though the mirrors were now its own windows. The hatchling pressed its head into her chest, its tiny claws pricking her arm. She realized then that she could feel not only its heartbeat, but its fear. And something else. A flicker of power, still small but growing. The flight from the grove. Ashwing's wings struck the air in heavy rhythmic beats, each one sending bursts of wind through the grove's crystalline branches. The sound wasn't the clean rush of normal flight. Here the air seemed thicker, as if resisting their escape. Beneath them the glass ground began to shift. The once static surface now moved like water under ice, rippling in waves that followed their path. Shadows swam just below, dark shapes pressing upward against the glass as if it were a fragile skin they meant to tear through. Rowan clutched the hatchling close, the little dragon's heat warming her chest through her tunic. It trembled, but not only from fear. There was a strange tension running through its body, a coiling energy like a storm waiting to break. Ashwing's mind voice rumbled in her thoughts, low but urgent. "Do not let it unleash too soon. It does not yet know itself. The fire of its kind can burn more than flesh. It can burn the thread of a soul." Rowan didn't answer. Her throat felt tight and her breath came in quick bursts. She could feel the Hollow One's presence pressing closer with every heartbeat. The mirror struck next. From the shards still clinging to the twisted branches, the Hollow One's faceless form lunged, not in the physical grove but in the reflections. The glass caught its movements like water catching moonlight, and suddenly dozens of its copies were reaching, grasping, trying to pull Rowan and Ashwing into their mirrored world. Irinder's voice echoed faintly from somewhere behind, still holding the grove's edge. "Don't look directly into them. They pull through the eyes first." But Rowan had already made the mistake. Just for an instant, her gaze locked with the Hollow One in a shard of crystal. And in that instant the world flipped. She wasn't flying anymore. She was falling. The grove was gone, replaced by a black sea lit only by distant, swaying lights. Beneath her, the water was glassy and cold, and far below its surface huge shadows moved, not swimming but crawling. She could hear the Hollow One's voice now, like many voices pressed into one. "The little dreamwalker. You carry the ember. Give it to me." The hatchling hissed, the sound slicing through the darkness like a spark on oil. And just like that, Rowan was back, gasping, clutching at Ashwing's scales. The wind roared in her ears, her pulse hammering. The hatchling was no longer trembling. Its scales glowed faintly, veins of molten gold running under the smoky black. Rowan could feel its intent, sharp and uncoiling. The Hollow One's mirrored copies swarmed along the edges of reality, closing in. Ashwing, Rowan shouted over the wind, it's going to. She didn't finish. The Ember's choice. Ashwing's dive was like a thrown spear, precise, unstoppable, and utterly silent until the last instant. Then the wind screamed, tearing at Rowan's hair and clothes as they plummeted toward the shimmering ring of silver light that marked the grove's edge. The hatchling in her arms no longer trembled. It throbbed with heat, its scales so warm she almost couldn't bear to hold it. Faint fissures of golden fire traced along its body, pulsing in rhythm with its tiny, pounding heart. Behind them, the Hollow One's faceless army poured forward, the shadows knitting into something worse than a wall. They were making a net. Ashwing's mind voice was sharp, unyielding. Rowan. If it strikes again now, the Ember will wake fully. She understood without needing explanation. The Ember wasn't just the hatchling's breath. It was something older, deeper, and dangerous. A force that didn't stop once released. The silver ring was close now, but so was the net. Limbs and faces, black as obsidian, reaching for them with grasping, claw-like fingers. The first touch came, a scraping across Ashwing's wingtip. He snarled and banked hard, but the movement cost them speed. Rowan's heartbeat surged. She knew the truth. Without the hatchling's fire, they would be dragged down before they reached the edge. With it, they might not be able to control what happened next. The hatchling's molten gaze locked with hers, and in its eyes she saw not fear but trust. Do it, Rowan whispered. Ashwing growled low in warning, but the hatchling reared its small head back and screamed. The sound was not of this world. A beam of gold-white fire exploded forward, not like a stream but like the opening of a sun. The air bent around it, warping with heat, and the black shapes in their path ignited, not in ordinary flame, but in something that burned their very existence. The net shredded. The path to the silver ring was open. Ashwing surged forward, his great wings pounding. The silver light rushed to meet them, humming with a frequency Rowan felt in her bones. They broke through. And the grove vanished behind them like a dream scattering in daylight. They were flying over open skies again, the world beneath green and gold with distant rivers threading through it. The air was cool, the wind clean. But the hatchling was limp in Rowan's arms. Its fire gone, its glow fading to faint embers under its scales. She could still feel its heartbeat, weak but steady. Ashwing's mind voice came quieter now. It will live. But the ember does not give without taking. This one will need time, and so will you. Rowan held the small dragon close and stared ahead, the horizon blazing with a sunset too vivid to be ordinary. Somewhere beyond it, the Hollow One would follow. And somewhere beyond that was the door she still needed to find. Emberlight at dusk. They landed on a narrow shelf of rock high above a silver-threaded valley. The wind here carried the scent of pine and snowmelt, and for the first time in what felt like days, Rowan could breathe without tasting iron. Ashwing folded his wings carefully, the membrane along the left one still marked with a faint scorch where the Hollow One's net had grazed him. He didn't complain, but Rowan could feel the faint tremor in the great muscles under his scales. The hatchling lay nestled in the crook of her arm, its sides rising and falling in shallow, steady breaths. The faint glow under its skin had dimmed to the softest ember, pulsing slowly. Ashwing turned his head toward her, molten eyes catching the last of the sunset. We stop here. The ember needs to rest where the sky can see it. Rowan frowned, glancing up. The sky. The ember is not just fire, Rowan. It is a piece of the first dawn. It was meant to burn only under open skies, not in shadow and never in stone. She knelt on the stone, laying the hatchling gently on a patch of warm sun-heated rock. The dragonet curled in on itself, tail wrapping over its nose like a cat, and sighed. Rowan hesitated. You've called it the ember before, but you've never said what it actually is. Ashwing's gaze drifted toward the horizon where the sun bled into the mountains. His voice in her mind was slower now, deeper, like an old tale being unrolled. When the world was young, before the forests had roots and the rivers had beds, there was only the first sky. It burned with a light so fierce it kept the darkness beyond from swallowing this place whole. But the light faded as all things do, and the last spark of that first fire fell into the world. The dragons were its keepers. We called it the ember, and from it we drew our breath, our heat, our flight. Without it we would be as cold as the mountains in winter, and the dark things beyond the sky would walk freely again. Rowan listened, her hand unconsciously resting on the hatchling's tiny head. Then this little one, it's carrying something the Hollow One wants because with it the Hollow One could snuff the last light of this world. Or twist it into a fire that burns for nothing but itself. The wind shifted, colder now, brushing Rowan's cheek. Somewhere far below, the valley darkened, and the silver river turned to a black ribbon under the stars. She looked down at the sleeping hatchling. So we keep it safe. No matter what. Ashwing's eyes met hers, steady and fierce. No matter what. They made camp with the minimal tools they had. A bedroll for Rowan, a nest of sun-warmed stones for the hatchling, and Ashwing curled close enough to shield them both from the wind. The fire they lit was small, more for comfort than heat, and Rowan sat watching the flames while Ashwing's breathing slowed into the steady rhythm of a predator at rest but never truly asleep. Above them the stars began to gather, and in their faint flickering patterns, Rowan thought she saw something watching back. The visitor at the edge. The fire had burned down to coals, the glow painting faint copper on the stone. Rowan stirred in her bedroll, the cold biting at her face. For a moment she thought it was the wind that had woken her, but then she realized something was wrong. The warmth beside her was gone. She sat up sharply. The bed of sun-warmed stones where the hatchling had curled was empty, the faint scent of ash still lingering in the air. Ashwing was there, but his head was down, his eyes closed, breathing deep, too deep. Her pulse spiked. She'd seen him sleep like that only once before, after fighting for days without pause. He wouldn't have let the hatchling slip away unless. Rowan's gaze swept the ledge. That's when she saw the figure. They stood at the far edge where the moonlight silvered the cliff's drop. Tall, cloaked, their outline blurring like mist in a breeze. One hand cradled the sleeping hatchling against their chest. The figure's voice when it came was soft and low, but carried easily over the distance. You've done well to bring it this far, Rowan. Her fists clenched. Put it down. Pause. The cloak shifted as they stroked the hatchling's back almost tenderly. It's dying. Even your dragon knows it, that's why he sleeps. The ember takes more than it gives, and this one burns itself away faster than it should. Rowan took a slow step forward, boots scraping on stone. You don't care about saving it. You want it for the Hollow One. The figure tilted their head slightly as though amused. Not the hollow one. I serve someone older. Someone who remembers what the ember really is. Something in the moonlight caught the edge of their face, and Rowan saw eyes like molten silver, glowing faintly from within. Not human. Not dragon. Something in between. Ashwing stirred then, his eyes snapping open. His voice struck her mind with the force of a wing beat. Rowan. That's a starborn. The figure's silver gaze locked on Ashwing. You should be grateful I've come. You won't survive what's coming without me, or without the truth of the ember's origin. They extended one hand toward Rowan. Come with me now and I'll tell you what even your dragon won't. The wind rose around the ledge, cold enough to sting, carrying a scent that was not of this world. Into the sky that isn't ours. Rowan's breath came slow, measured. Ashwing's gaze burned into her, but he didn't speak again. He knew, if she ran they'd lose the hatchling. He straightened. I'll go. But the hatchling stays with me. The starborn's lips curved, not quite into a smile. You'll hold it soon enough. They extended their free hand. Rowan stepped forward and took it. The skin was cold, not icy but the strange coolness of starlight on metal. The world blinked. One heartbeat she was standing on the cliff ledge under the moon, the next she was standing nowhere. Black stretched in every direction, threaded with rivers of light that pulsed like veins. Her stomach lurched. There was no ground, yet she stood as if on something solid. The starborn walked ahead, each step leaving a ripple in the glowing threads. This is the Vein Way. Dragons cannot pass here, not even yours. Too much fire in their blood. But you, Rowan, are balanced enough between ember and flesh. She hurried to keep up. Where are we going? To the beginning. As they moved, the light around them shifted from silver to a deep, burning gold. Far in the distance, something massive loomed. A sphere of fire suspended in the darkness, crisscrossed with black cracks. The light bled out through them like molten metal under broken stone. Rowan stopped, staring. What is that? The starborn's voice was reverent. The first ember. The one from which all others are born. This hatchling you protect carries a splinter of it. But the splinter is unstable. It burns without restraint. They held the sleeping hatchling up, and for a moment the golden light flared brighter, the cracks shifting like they were alive. Rowan felt the heat even from here, not just on her skin but in her chest, as if her own heartbeat had synced with it. The starborn glanced at her. You want to save it, yes? Then you must understand, the ember was never meant to remain in this world. Dragons stole it long ago, twisting its purpose. That is why the Hollow One seeks it, to undo what your companion's kind began. Rowan's throat tightened. You're telling me Ashwing's people are the villains? I'm telling you the truth has teeth. A sudden shudder ran through the Veinway, the threads of light vibrating. Far behind them, a shadow moved, a shape so vast it made the first ember look small. The starborn's grip tightened on Rowan's hand. Too late. It has followed you here. Rowan's stomach turned cold. The Hollow One. The starborn's eyes flashed like lightning over snow. No. Something worse.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to be notified about upcoming releases to the Wyckmoore series, please subscribe.